Remember, the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. So the first Noble Truth is about dukkha, suffering. The second, the cause of suffering. And the third, he says that you can end the suffering. And he gives you a formula under the fourth, the Noble Eightfold Path. And under the Noble Eightfold Path, for morality, we have right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So, right speech is still the Dhamma. Okay, so let's go on. We have already learned some techniques on skillful speech in the Dhamma bites on the abstinence from harsh speech. So what we will do now is to link these techniques to what we did, okay, the last time. For speech, we use the Vacha Sutta. We know that speech has two components, right? The speaking and the listening. Only with these 5 factors can we create the right conditions for effective communication in expressing one's needs. So instead of demanding or forcing the other person to give what they want, right? Now the 5 factors will show us what is right speech, yes, but it slows us down to sense the needs of others, regardless of how they express themselves. We also have the situation empathy. Because our mind, we do not judge, which means identifying with the other person's feelings and needs. We show the other person that we are with him, but without getting tangled up in his emotions. Only then can we move on to look for strategies or solutions that will satisfy both parties. So sensing the needs of others and providing empathy involves what? Right listening. It is mindful and non-judgmental listening. Now, these 4 conditions means, number 1, we pay careful attention to what the other person is saying, instead of thinking what we are going to say while the other person is still talking. Number 2, checking to make sure that needs are accurately received. Number 3, not getting caught up in the judgmental thoughts. And number 4, not taking in whatever negativities the other person is throwing at us and responding in kind. Because right speech requires mindfulness, it forces us to stay in the present moment. Now, not judging and not retaliating is what the Buddha means when he said that our minds will remain unaffected. Now, this is possible only if we cultivate loving kindness and compassion for ourselves and others. All these have to work together to give a holistic practice of skillful and effective communication. Can I just pause here? Can you all hear me well? Because I can't see any of you.
Yes, Sister Siew Fong, we can hear you.
Good, now I'll move on. So at the end of the day, right, what is important is that we connect positively with others using right speech so that we do not cause harm to ourselves and to others. In other words, we do not benefit at other person's expense, and we do not give up our own needs either. We are now, all right, going to view a number of scenarios. The first one is something we have already covered, but we will use these examples to bring everything we have learned together. You can read this on your own. Remember this? This is an example of the kind of conflict we experience quite often in our everyday life. Petty arguments with the occasional insult and sarcasm thrown in. Let's review. So, The wife is not calm, so she should not make her request, even if her husband is attentive, at ease, and ready to listen. Number 2, the speech was not agreeable, polite, or considerate. Right? Number 3, the wife was irritated and the husband was defensive and trying to push blame back to the wife. So no metta. Number 4, statements like, why do you keep doing this? Why does everything has to be done according to your time schedule? Or, I always clean up after myself, are most likely exaggeration of facts and therefore not true. And speech was not beneficial because what happened here? Disrupted harmony between husband and wife. Now, without these 5 factors, there is no way they can create the conditions for right speech to occur, right? So it is easy for us to see faults here. But if you are the husband and wife, you will likely justify your speech as true, accurate, and timely, since there's no better time to say it. So why should we avoid unskillful speech? Let's revise. Number 1, because it indicates or implies wrongness on the part of the receiver. Number 2, prevents speaker from hearing the needs of the receiver and blocks expression of speaker's needs. And as a result, this leads to conflicts and misunderstandings and divorces, which was exactly what happened here. Their dialogue did not reflect their needs at all, right? The husband and wife blame each other for their unmet needs. And not only that, they also blame each other for their negative mental states that arise because of their unmet needs. So without metta and karuna, compassion, there is no empathy and concern for each other's well-being. So the receivers will not have his needs heard and understood, and the speaker also cannot express his needs because he is busy finding fault. So how do they communicate skillfully? Let's see. Now let's review this dialogue using the Buddhist guidelines for right speech. So the speech was conducted at the right time because the both of them were calm and ready to listen to each other. Number 2, the couple stated clearly and mutually what they wanted. No fault finding. Number 3, the wife made a polite request and the husband answered with respect and consideration for wife's well-being. No demands, sarcasm, or name-calling. And number 4, the speech was beneficial because harmony was maintained. And this kind of dialogue creates the conditions for a more stable marital relationship. And number 5, all these made possible because of what? Metta. You don't judge. With metta and karuna, both parties will make the effort to give from the heart instead of giving in out of what? Duty, out of guilt, out of fear of conflict. Only when we have the 5 factors of right speech can these conditions be applied. We will now look at the conditions one by one. I will start from the bottom up because the guidelines for proposing strategies are the same as those for requests. First, you have to use present language. What you need at this moment. Don't refer to the past. You never this, you never that. Number 2, when you speak, please be specific, be clear. Try not to be vague. For example, can you help me so I do not have to do all the work? Not just, why can't you help me? Number 3, it has to be doable, right? Do not ask for a change in attitude. Too abstract and it's an attack. Number 4, use positive language, means stating what is wanted what is wanted, not what is not wanted from the other person. Right? So what is underlined here, right, also meets the 3 criteria, right? So let us look at more examples. Now, let's look at the 4 points. Here, you have present language. Stating the request and proposed strategy with, would you be willing, brings the discussion into the present because it gives us the opportunity to find out how the other person feels about it. Whether they have any reservations or if they say no, we can find out why there and then. Be very specific. Take responsibility for what? Has to be something specific, like would you? Next, it got to be positive. You tell the person what you want him to do instead of complaining what he did not do. And it has to be doable, right? Everything here is doable. And negative language hides what a person wants and can sound like a complaint or a criticism. So saying things in negative language can create confusion, like in this next example. Did the husband listen to her? Yes, he listened. He signed up for bowling, probably thinking she wanted him to exercise more. If she had expressed what she wanted instead, it would have been like this. Now, let's turn the tables around. If the wife did not clearly express what she wanted, how should the husband handle it so there will not be any confusion and misunderstanding? First, he has to listen carefully, mindfully, and put on non-judging ears. This means paying careful attention to his wife's words in order to sense her needs behind her request instead of making assumptions. He can ask to be sure, like this. Then the wife can reply to express her needs better, like this. So when the wife told him that he was not spending enough time with her and the children, he provided empathy by validating what she said, like this. So in this way, he can also check to make sure that her needs are accurately received. So with this example, let's move on to the conditions for empathy. Providing empathy means identifying with and validating the other person's feelings and needs. Just be there. Just listen. Just understand. No need to explain. Reassure, advise, disagree, judge, or even apologize. Here are some examples. This is not empathy because never mind. This is empathy. Empathy also means listening for feelings and needs, even when we do not like what they are doing or what they are saying, or when they say no, when they demand, even when they stay silent. Like in this case, so this continues until the child's needs for empathy are met. The mother does not need to offer any explanations because I am sure the child already knows why she has to sleep early. What the child wants is to have her feelings and needs validated. Sometimes they just want the attention. So empathy is the best approach in this case. You don't have to justify, just listen. She will still have to go to sleep by 9. Next, huh? And when a person is suffering from unmet needs, they can be too injured to hear what you have to say until they feel that their suffering is fully understood. Now, this shows what? Empathy also gives both parties the chance to reflect and enable the speaker to check whether the other person's needs are accurately received. So let's recap. Huh? Number 1, providing empathy means identifying with and validating the other person's feelings and needs. Number 2, all we have to do is to be there to listen and understand. Number 3, sometimes empathy alone is enough because the other person just wants to be heard and understood. And number 4, showing empathy gives us the opportunity to reflect and check to make sure that the other person's needs are accurately received. Remember, empathy is only possible when there is metta, kindness, and compassion, because only then, because when you do not judge, all right, that's when we listen mindfully and connect with the other person's unmet needs in a non-judgmental way. Now, we look at these conditions. Unfortunately, most of us have problems expressing our needs because we are quite used to criticizing and blaming others when things do not go our way. So in the next few examples, we will see the words spoken by people in conflicts vis-a-vis their actual needs. You can read this. Remember this example? This was shown when we did harsh speech. The two Nigerian tribes blamed each other for the suffering they went through. Their verbal conflicts escalated to war and having a lot of loss of lives, when what they meant was simply this. Now, these are their unmet needs. You can see that there is a huge difference between their words and their needs. Actual words and what this retrenched worker actually meant. See here. Next, you can read this. Now, this couple has been married for 39 years. Problem arises because 6 months into the marriage, the wife had already overdrawn the checkbook 2 times. So the husband took back control from then onwards and refused to let the wife write checks. And they have been arguing about this for the whole of the 39 years, 38 and a half years. It's a real incident. But these are their needs, right? But however, the needs were expressed very differently. Now, if these people had expressed their needs using right speech, instead of blaming others, misunderstanding and conflicts could have been avoided. This brings us to a very important point. How do we identify our own needs? If we cannot express our own needs, it is very, very difficult to sense the needs of others, right? So for these, we have to go back to the second noble truth. Familiar? First, we have to understand the cause of suffering is what? Craving, tanha. And all our needs come from the two forms of craving, either bhawa tanha, the wanting, or the vibhava tanha, wanting something but cannot get. So in most cases, conflicts due to unmet needs. But this causes dukkha or suffering in the form of anger, frustration, disappointment, jealousy, etc. Remember this? Anger arises from where? Anger arises from unmet needs. So the cause of suffering comes from within us, not outside, not without. We always forget these and blame outside factors for our suffering. But the external factors are just conditions that act as triggers. And these triggers are not the cause of our anger. Remember my explanation on causes and conditions for a tree to grow? So the seed is the cause, but you need conditions like light, air, and water and nutrients for the tree to grow. And a big tree, a healthy tree, is the result. So the first step is understand that our needs, okay, craving for non-being and unmet needs are the cause of suffering. You can read the second step on your own. Third step. The first and second steps form the theoretical knowledge. The third step is the practice. Now, each time we go through these three steps, we are using what? We are using panya, wisdom. Let us look at an example here. You are very tall, but you do not like your height. You wish all the time you were shorter. So, this is an unmet need, which is the cause of your inferiority complex. Now, someone commented, you are taller than a giraffe. You become angry and embarrassed. You find the girl very rude and insensitive, and you blame her for making you suffer. But her comment is just the trigger. It is not the cause of your suffering or negative feeling. Your unmet need is actually the cause. Sorry. Your unmet need is actually the cause. So what is the understanding here from step 1 to step 3? You can read. We have to be honest with ourselves when we try to get in touch with our feelings and needs because, after all, we are responsible for our own karma. It is not easy. We need metta, kindness, and compassion for ourselves because we have to be mindful of our own needs in a very non-judgmental way. Now, let's look at this example. This is a discussion between colleagues, right, about the progress of a project they are working on. You can read. Now, let's say you are the woman on the left, right? And you know the Dhamma, so you go through steps 1 to 3 and realize that you became irritated because of your unmet needs for understanding and support as to why you did not complete your project work on time. So, how do you rectify this situation? You know that you are responsible for your own feelings and needs. Just knowing Knowing this can help you get out of your irritation, and you can frame a reply in a way that will help others understand you better and give you the support that you need. And you can read, this will be the next follow-up conversation. And then you get this reply. So, do these words meet the criteria of right speech? Yes, it is the proper time, because you said it only when you are very calm, right? It is true. It is gentle. The speech was polite and considerate because, you took into account your colleague's deadline and project. And of course, beneficial because there's harmony. Harmony between them was actually restored, and there was kindness. Right? The speech conveyed concern for the colleagues' and well-being. So every time when someone says something that makes us suffer, we have to remember to touch base with our own feelings and our own needs. And that is why Ajahn Sucitto asked that we should pause 10 seconds first before we speak. Next, sensing the needs of others. This requires mindful listening, which means we have to be mindful and non-judgmental in order to effectively capture the needs behind the words. Every message, whatever its form or content, is an expression of a need. For example, if you ask a question, what the other person has said, and he responds like this, you will instinctively think that it is a judgment of you, but it's an unmet need shown here. If he says this, but the unmet need may be this. Now, this includes protection from unfavorable judgments and criticism from others. What happens if he replies like this? But the unmet need may be this. Right? For example, the friend may want to accompany you to a movie or concert, but does not want to ask and risk being rejected. Yeah? And what happens if the response is this? The child may sometimes say things like that, but the child may be asking daddy to play with her rather than read the paper, and this is her unmet need. Sensing the needs of others creates a better quality of connection and communication that can prevent conflicts altogether. So do not be reactive, and the more you meditate, you are increasing the gap between the stimulus and the response. Now, we have covered all the conditions, but there are two more areas to look at. The first is parent-child communication, particularly with teenagers. Our conversations with them can become extremely challenging because of the generation gap. The teenage ends and their belief that they know everything. So since many of you here are parents, I thought I should just cover this issue. Now, we still use the same communication techniques that is based on the 4 qualities for right speech. It is no different from how we apply right speech for adults. However, some children always react negatively, no matter how skillfully you talk to them. So how do we handle such situations? So there is an article on right speech where the author overcame her communication problems with her teenage children, and they both come up with a workable communication strategy. I will just share 2 of these strategies with you. First, tell your child this. So it becomes your child's responsibility to propose a time for discussion. So your child can respond immediately or think it over or respond in a few hours or a few days later. Give a reasonable timeline if that is important. So this delay decreases the sense of emergency and allows your child to come up with a more thoughtful response. This encourages him to reflect too, because you are practicing right speech. It also helps to give the child the assurance that you do not intend to find fault, but to find out what the problem is and solve it together, so she will not be defensive. So she will feel that you are with her to solve the problem and not against her from the outset. The second strategy is when you are talking with the child, establish some do's and don'ts to facilitate discussion. Start simple. Work out maybe 10 ideas like this. All right, best to work out together, get the child's input. And during the discussion, remember the guidelines to right speech. Some of you will say, "Aya, no use lah. All this will not work on my child." Do not give up before you try. The important thing is to work on yourself first. Get comfortable with the skills before you tackle your child. Most parents do not listen to the child and tend to be condescending, and that's why children generally do not like to talk to the parents, do not like to listen to the parents, because they feel that the response is always judgment, should or should not, should or should not. Two last situations to review. Remember this? Your father or another elderly person living with you keep forgetting to switch off the bathroom light. In an elderly person's case, the forgetfulness is part and parcel of old age, right? And this condition can be serious if he is suffering from dementia or Alzheimer. Reminding him gently with metta when he is in a good mood and ready to listen may not work, In fact, you may end up making him feel sad and inadequate because he cannot do anything about his condition because he's just forgetful. So speech is not even necessary in such case. Just walk around the house once in a while to turn off the lights, the tap, and aircon for him, and do it happily. If it is your spouse who keeps forgetting to switch off the bathroom light, you can tell him or her something like this. And follow up with this if you want to. This is beneficial speech. You do not find fault. You are proposing a good strategy in a polite, gentle manner. You see, when your wife marries you, she didn't say she's perfect, and vice versa. So when someone you care about is grieving after a loss, it can be very painful, right? And difficult to know what to say or what to do. The bereaved struggle with many painful emotions, including depression, anger, guilt, and deep sadness. Their intense pain and difficult emotions can make people very uncomfortable about offering support. So just let them know that you are there. Do not force them to open up to you. But you can ask something like this, right? So it is very important to just listen. Say nothing, just be with the person. Give a hug, hold the person's hand. Offer a solution to cry on. These non-verbal expressions help. Okay? Remember, I touched on non-verbal expressions last week. And if you have something to say, well, there are examples of some things you should never say. You can read on your own. Okay, this is the follow-up. Yeah. These are things you should not say. it sounds like pity or comes across maybe if as a bit condescending, if your friend is sensitive. Instead, you can actually begin your comments with like, have you thought about this? Or have you thought about that? So paraphrase what you wish to say. But please avoid this. Never say things like you should or you should not. Now, remember this slide? It is important to know why you are speaking before you speak. Now, the techniques used in this application for skillful speech are taken actually from the book Living Non-Violent Communications, NVC for shorter, by Marshall Rosenberg. Now, the examples are given from his book as well as from other sources. I'll just let you know why I used actually his conclusion. Now just look at the parts highlighted. Sorry. Okay. Do you realize that these principles are also mentioned in the Buddhist teachings? His whole NYC process is based on compassion, and although he did not mention it, kindness is evident in his practice. That is why I use his examples. Now, everyone wants to be heard, understood, valued, and respected. But how many actually make the effort to hear, to understand, to value, and respect others? We have to make the effort to practice. Learning to apply right speech is like learning a second language. It is a lifelong commitment that calls for consistency, patience, as well as constant practice and reflection under the Noble Eightfold Path. However, it will be one of the biggest investments in your life because your hard work will result in improved relationships with people around you, as well as peace and harmony within your household. Next, how does avoiding unskillful speech and practicing skillful speech purify the mind? So every time, right, we exercise restraint from unskillful speech, and every time we decide when to speak, what to say, and how to say it, we are training ourselves to be mindful, to hold back and reflect on our actions, to think about someone else besides ourselves, and to develop what? Kindness and compassion. In the process, we develop wisdom because we know why we are practicing this way, and we have the right intentions. We also develop greater awareness of our actions and the necessary mind muscles to help us let go of these unskillful actions. So, right speech may fall in the domain of sila, but what we don't say and what we say will influence our training in wisdom, panya, and concentration, samadhi. That is why the practice starts with morality. You can read this. Remember, unskillful speech can lead to retaliation, unhappiness, and drama that creates a lot of inner speech, giving rise to lots of unhealthy mental states. The mind becomes very, very restless and sometimes also remorseful. How to meditate like that? What we need is useful internal speech instead of speech that tells us instead, right? Like for speech that tells us to relax, where to direct our attention, how to stay with the meditation object, etc. So to be skillful in our internal speech, we have to be skillful in our external speech because they influence each other, right? Together with right action and right livelihood, morality forms the foundation of for samatha and vipassana training. Read this. So sometimes when we encounter difficulty in meditation, it is good to take a step back and ask ourselves whether we have been observing right speech. Not only do we practice awareness this way, but at a deeper level, we can also watch our state of mind and check whether the mental energy is affected or not, before, during, and after speaking. Now, speech habits are indeed very difficult to break. So it is impossible to change overnight. We will continue to make mistakes, but these mistakes are actually part of our Dhamma practice and Dhamma education. Communication using right speech is an evolving process. As we progress in our mental cultivation, right speech will become easier and easier. From now onwards, every time before you speak, pause, watch your intentions, and decide whether what you say will improve the silence or not. If not, I will end here. Don't speak. So brothers and sisters, I have finally come to the end of my sharing on the right speech series. So thank you very much for your patience. I will stop share.
Thank you very much for your sharing, sister. We appreciate it. Right now it should be time for Q&A. So brothers and sisters, please feel free to ask whatever questions pop into your mind and ask away as much as you want. Oh yeah, we have one question already. Apart from applying skillful speech, is there any additional mind qualities required to have an effective communication with our parents?
Okay. May I can make a request that if some of you can, it's convenient to switch on your videos, can you do so that I can see whether what I'm saying, whether you're acknowledging or yeah. Thank you very much.
Yep, sure.
Now, speaking to your parents, must be very careful. They are your parents. So they are not ever going to listen to you, period. So never give your parents unsolicited advice. Never. Parents at that age, they need validation of feelings, validation that you still care, you still respect them. Okay, they're still relevant in your life. So for parents, communication with them is a lot of mindful listening, acknowledgement, and give them a lot of respect. Okay? Even if you come back home, hi dad and mom, without even a smile, they notice. So when you see your parents, right, a smile, show that you're happy to see them. That is right speech. Speech involves behavior. That is part of communication. Okay, so for parents, remember, don't give unsolicited advice, period. Unless they ask for your advice.
All right. Thank you, sister. Do we have any other?
Yeah, cut off. Sorry.
Yeah, we're trying to get more questions. We hope we can. Or maybe do we have any questions from last week?
I'm a divorce lawyer, and let me tell you, I've drafted thousands of petitions. My whole team, we've drafted so many divorce petitions. And let me tell you, right speech or lack of right speech is one of the main culprits. Besides unfaithfulness, is the culprit. Even if the husband and wife, they committed adultery, you come back, you apologize, I'm sorry, I promise never to do it again. I understand how you feel. The marriage can be saved. But more often than not, The wife use harsh speech, the husband will apologize, then harsh speech comes, and then the husband will say, get defensive and start justifying, hey, you are this, but you never this, you never this. And let me tell you, it's not the act of adultery that caused the breakdown, because it could be just a mental aberration. More often than not, let me tell you, is the unskillful speech following the act that caused marital breakdown. So it's very, very important that speech divides, speech heals. That's the reason why Buddha, under morality, right speech comes at number 3. And I really shared with you the discourses by the Buddha on right speech. Why do you think he spends so much time talking about it? We talk every day. So as long as we are mindful of what he told us to do, you are on the path, you're practicing. Yes. And I can tell you, I have clients who tell me, Miss Fu, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, he said this, he said this, he said this. You'll be surprised. They can remember hurtful words, right? Or for example, during a quarrel, the wife said to the husband, why are you so useless? You think that can be forgiven or forgotten? Even if the husband can forgive, will he forget? And can you imagine every time you use all this kind of speech, right? And so unskillful. Can you imagine like a wall here? Can you imagine a crack, the crack, the crack? Now you understand emotional baggage. Now you understand why people can't tell you, I know, you know? And because you have this wall, you have this crack, right? You know, it's very difficult to patch back, you know. 会累积的. And that's the reason why in a lot of marriages, okay? I'm sorry I talk about marriages because this is what I deal with every day of my life. That's why in a lot of marriages, right? You hear things like, I can never love my spouse. I can never have a lot of goodwill towards my spouse because of all these cracks. A lot of judgment already. You should not do this. You should not do that. You should not say this. You should not say that. And because of that, when you speak to a person that's very close to you, the moment the person say things like, hey, can you don't work so hard? Even nicely, right? The defensiveness will come up already. And the unskillful speech will just come out. You can see? So start today. Start afresh. No judgment. Do metta in the morning. All right.
Sister, we have 2 more questions. Oh, a few more questions actually. If after using skillful speech, we are still unable to achieve resolution in conflict, what should be our next course of action?
Okay. One, try to give in. Okay, which question is that? Oh,
the second one. Yeah, after skillful speech.
To reach a resolution in conflict situation. You know something, sometimes you can agree to disagree, you know. We're talking about 2 different perceptions and 2 different views. They don't have to come to an agreement. Sometimes it's just agree to disagree, right? So if you apply skillful speech all through the 5 factors, that's all you can do. You don't have to crave that the person must agree with you all the time. I'm just answering generally because I don't, unless you give me an example. So I go on to the next one. If there's a need from a spouse, family members, one try to give in to avoid any conflict. When the need cravings start to grow and becoming more demanding, what is the right action one should do? If you live with a family member in the same household and you have certain things that bug you, try to resolve it. Because if it doesn't, it will make you unhappy. And if you're unhappy, you have this judgment already. So it's easier to have quarrels. So find the proper time to say what you need to say. All right, just go through the other 4 other factors and it should be fine. And if the retaliation is not something you expect, or if the person you speak to is still upset and respond in an unskillful way, look for the unmet needs. You are trained. You know the Dhamma. You pause before you speak. Okay? Both family members want to be well and happy. Both family members want a resolution. So usually a resolution can be found, because when the other party mind is on fire, you pour water, and then both parties will be able to find compromise. Many times despite of children. Children is always a challenge. I think at the end of the day, for housework especially, the children always feel that they're doing it because the parents want them to do it. The parents nag at them to do it. So it's like they're doing it like automatic cruise control, not because they really want to do it or feel that they need to do it. So at some point or another, to call a family meeting and sit down and talk about building a clean, peaceful household, talk about each person's responsibility in this family. Maybe that will help to have a family meeting to sort this out. Yeah. So I think they need to buy into the idea why they need to do certain tasks. Yeah, I remember when I was young, when I was a young girl, my mom always asked me to wash the dishes, and I do not like to wash the dishes. And I did refuse to wash the dishes because my brother was not asked to wash the dishes. And I was quite rebellious because I couldn't understand that until I had understanding with my mom, and she could explain to me what was her perception of chores and why certain things need to be done a certain way. And she wanted me to buy into it and ask for my understanding. And that's when I was open. Oh, my mom is a very demanding person. She likes to maintain control on all of us. I find speaking to her very challenging. Okay, I tell you what, just acknowledge. No point trying to talk to your mom, especially when, so talk to your mom, not after she tells you to do something, okay? She expects you to adhere to what she does. I think you need to just live with it. And when the timing is right, like when you bring her for a holiday or when you bring her for a nice meal, and when during the proper time, you can just talk to your mom and say, Mom, can I tell you how I feel about something? Never talk to your mom starting with you. The moment you say you, she will be defensive and all hell's going to break loose. So when you sit your mom down, you can sit opposite your mom, express to your mom why you feel a certain way. Now, I know that's a challenge. For example, my mom doesn't have very good health, all right? And I always want her to go with me for meditation retreats, but given her health, it was hard. So I wanted her to be vegan. I wanted her to change her diet. But whenever I tell her things like that, she'll say, no, life is short. You should enjoy yourself and things like that. Even though she knows the Dhamma, but she just thinks that, hey, moderation, I can still eat a little bit of this, eat a little bit of that. Justification and rationalization. But so one day I remembered when she was in a terribly good mood, I brought her for a holiday. I sat opposite her and told her that I care for her very much. I loved her very much. And I tell her that in the future, I will be in Thailand. I will stay there. And if anything happens to her, I can't take care of her and it causes me worry. So I started a conversation. Okay. And I bet you, I telling you, my mama is now pescatarian. That means she only eats fish and vegetables. And she doesn't touch fried food. She doesn't take dairy. And she lost weight. Her medication is halved. So to me, at the end of the day, it was challenging. But to find the proper time is very important. So at the time when I tell her, don't eat this, don't eat that, please go and exercise, I do nag at her. She will just say, she doesn't listen. So what's the point of me trying to communicate with her at that time? It's not the proper time. So you find the proper time. I know it's difficult, but your mom loves you. And if she knows that your concern for her is what propel you to come up with the idea, she will open her mind up. Yes. Construction industry. Yeah. Practice unskillful speech day in, day out due to the nature of a communication. Yes. Because I see a lot of contractors, they were telling me that they have to talk to their workers, they must scold their workers, use 4-letter words, sometimes, must talk their language. Yeah. And they feel that that is the way to get things done. But I can tell you, during COVID, right? Can you imagine the construction industry? A lot of domestic construction workers, 客工, foreign workers had COVID, and they were quarantined, and the construction industry have no workers. So a lot of projects were placed on halted. Then my friend, she was building her home, and she had a very tight timeline. And when the construction workers came back, all right, she said that they could not complete. But what she did was she didn't scold the foreign workers. What she did, every day she would bring them food, really. Bring them water, bring them food, tell them that don't worry about it. She used kindness. Can you imagine? Her home was met the timeline, even though they held on pause for 2 months. So what is the best way to motivate people? With skillful communication. Yeah. How to resolve conflict between my husband and my mom? Remember this, when your husband complains to you about your mom, keep quiet and listen. Don't defend. When your mom complains to you about your husband, listen. Don't defend. Because if you do, you have quarrels with two sides. Because no matter how you defend your mom to your husband, he thinks that your mom is more important than him. Perception. No matter how you defend your husband to your mom, she will think the same way. Okay? So there are 2 ways you can go about it. Number 1, you don't get involved. Because the moment you get involved, it's like you are forced to make a choice between the 2. And why should you? They are both family members, right? So you don't make a choice. You don't get involved. You won't want to fight. You can fight between yourself. Okay? You start off with that first. Don't get involved. Never defend. Don't take sides. Then one day in the future, you have to talk to your mom. Okay? That your family now is your husband. You see your husband every day. You live your husband every day. He's the one you're going to grow up with, right? You tell your mom not to be overly protective of you. Tell your mom don't judge your husband. Okay? Tell your mom that okay, your mom can't change. She will nag at your husband like he nags at you. But if relationship is so bad, it could be because your mom has certain judgment of your husband, I don't know, and may come out in the communication, come out in the facial expression or something, I don't know why the conflict can be so bad. I hear of a lot of conflict between mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, but not so much between son-in-law and mother-in-law, okay? But whatever it is, talk to your mom first at a proper time, okay? Yeah, and because at the end of the day, your family unit is your husband and your children, okay? So you tell your mom not to intervene that much, or not to treat your husband like the way she treats you. You need to have that conversation at some point. But remember, never take sides. When they're quarreling, hands off. Yeah. The moment you get involved, that's it. I tell you, in the 1990s, not so much because the Singapore government give grants, right? So that newlyweds can afford to own their own home near their parents' home. But in the early 1990s, and 2000, a lot of divorce petitions were based on fights between in-laws, quite bad, let me tell you that. And it became very bad because the mom will complain to the son will go to, hey, why you do this? Oh, you're asking for it, or the other way around. Okay.
I think we just give it like maybe 10 seconds more to see if we have any questions. Thank you so much for giving us your answers, sister. And the thing I like about your answers is that most of it is because you have the real life experience and it's very like, practical answers. People that they can apply in daily life.
Right. I run the biggest matrimonial department in Singapore. And let me tell you, without skillful communication, you will not have that many happy marriages out there. Okay. Thank you, Sadhu.
The key. Any other questions? Any other questions? I think normally she'll charge for this type of advice, but today for Babs giving it FOC. Anyone? No? If that's the case, on behalf of all the participants, thank you so much, Sister Siew Fong. Would you like to lead us in the sharing of merits?
Yes, yes.
All right.
Okay, can everybody just settle your mind now? Settle down your mind. And close your eyes. Mind back to the body. Remember that the mind, mental energy can be very powerful when it's quiet. Just for 10 seconds, just settle your mind. By the grace of this merit that I have acquired, by our meditation, our puja, and our learning of the Dhamma, may I never associate with the foolish, but only the wise, until I attain final happiness. And by the grace of whatever merits that I have acquired, may these be helpful to eradicate my defilements and to overcome suffering. May all the merits that I have accumulated today be shared with my family and loved ones. May they be well and happy, and may they continue in the path towards the eradication of suffering. By the power of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, may all the Devas protect me, and may their blessings be with me. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.